Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. This is chapter number 8 of this year's economic survey. As you know, we have been summarizing chapter by chapter of this year's economic survey, taking all the important data, themes, trends that can be asked in the examination, both in the prelims and the mains examination point of view. We have already done chapters 1 to 7. I hope you have watched all of those. This is the turn of chapter number 8. Chapter number 8 is titled Services Sector, the New Growth Engine. As you know, over the past few years, in fact more than a decade now, our growth has mainly been led by the services sector in India, mostly the IT industry, and this is where this chapter of the economic survey focuses on. They talk about how the services sector has led India's growth, the rate of growth, the challenges that this sector is facing, and where do we stand in the world as compared to the other countries when it comes to IT sector. Also, within the services sector, there are many important subsectors, not just IT, so it focuses on that as well. Let's begin with what this chapter talks about. So, in the introduction, it says that the services sector contribute 62% of the global GDP. So, globally also, services sector is by far the biggest contributor to the global GDP. It has been a major driver of growth, not just in India, but in many other middle income countries, in Asia as well, Thailand, Philippines, China, etc. Around the world, if you rank India in terms of the contribution the services sector, we rank 7th globally. 4.3% of the total global services export comes in from India. Now, there are two ways to look at it. Obviously, it's much better than manufacturing. If you remember in the last chapter, we discussed 2.8% of global manufacturing happens from India. Here, our contribution is much more. But then, the types of things that you hear about India's service sector, you expect it to be a bigger contributor than 4.3%, but we still have a long way to go. Due to global uncertainties, our services sector has not been able to grow as much as it should, but still it is a big contributor to our national GDP. Now, this economic survey chapter talks about the performance of different sectors in this service sector. So it says that the total gross value added in the services account for 55% of India's total gross value added in this financial year. Some of the sectors within the service sector that have made the biggest contribution include trade, repair, hotels, then transport, storage, communication, financial services. All of these are part of the services sector. Our service sector growth after the pandemic has been at 8.3%, which is much better than the growth that we had in the pre-pandemic level. So we have regained completely from the shock that the pandemic gave us and the entire world, especially in the services sector. In terms of how the growth has been divided in the service sector, real estate, professional services, 20% growth has been seen in terms of the gross value added. 18% trade and hospitality, 15% financial services, so on and so forth. All these are part of services sector in the country. Services export, India has been exporting quite considerably in the services sector. Our exports in terms of services have grown at 11% in the last decade. So from financial year 2014 to 2023, the services export grew at 11%. The biggest contributors, you don't have any, I don't think there would be any trouble in guessing that. The biggest contributor in our services sector export has been computer services and business services. This is where IT and consultancy comes in. India is the second largest exporter in telecommunication, computer and IT services. We are third in other business services export, and also travel and transport has also seen a significant contribution from India in terms of exporting value. This is the number. In the past few years, how our services export has grown. So financial year 21, 7.5%, then 11.2%, 9.8, 10.5, and as you can see, our estimated growth this year will be the highest in the last 5 years. So we are again estimating. Why estimating? Because the time that the economic survey comes out, we have still not completed the financial year. The financial year comes to an end on 31st of March. So the data that we get in the economic survey is from 1st of April to 31st of December. So this is the data that comes in. They thus make an estimate of the remaining 3 months in this financial year. So the estimate is that our services export this year will grow at 12%. The economic survey chapter 8 also talks about purchasing managers index in the services sector. HSBC is the one that comes out with this index. HSBC India Services says that PMI has remained in expansionary phase for 41 consecutive months. Now, what is expansionary phase? So, PMI, Purchasing Manager Index, has a rating from 0 to 100. If you are above 50, that means you are in the expansion phase. So, your demand for services is increasing. Less than 50 means you are in the contraction phase. So, this index remained above 60 for the first 5 months, which indicates that in the services sector specifically, our demand is increasing and it's a good sign. This is how the graph looks like. If you are above this 50 line, that means you are expanding. If you are below the 50 line, that means you are contracting as per the Purchasing Manager Index. How has the financing been? Because all these services need a lot of financing. The banking credit to these services sector has been robust. It has stood at 48.5 lakh crore as of November 2024. So access to bank credit is not really a problem in the service sector. It has been growing at 13% year on year. Computer software professional services have received the highest credit growth, means highest loans are available to them. FDI inflows have also been significant. They have reached $5.7 billion from April to September financial year 25. Most of the FDI coming into this sector has been in the insurance sector. 62% of the total FDI, foreign direct investment, coming in has been in the insurance sector amongst the service sector. Then financial services have received 18% FDI coming into India. This is the breakup of the FDI coming into India services sector in FY25. Services sector, insurance sector rather, by far the biggest receiver. Financial services, IT. So IT doesn't receive a lot of FDI because they don't require it. The companies are very well balanced, established by themselves. They earn huge profit themselves, so they don't need it. Insurance sector, yes, it has received a lot of FDIs. Growth in IT and business process services has also been pretty impressive in India. India has grown its global capability centers from 1430 to 1700 in this financial year. Our employment also stands at 1.9 million professionals. India has about 28%, so more than 1 in 4 of the professionals working in STEM are in India. So STEM basically science, technology, engineering, mathematics. These are the areas which are driving the world's growth innovation forward. 28% of those professionals come from India. A lot of other Indian sectors have also seen adoption of AI in a pretty impressive way. That also has been mentioned in this year's economic survey. The economic survey also says that the government's push towards ONDC, Open Network for Digital Commerce, is impressive. It is a kind of an open platform where services can be listed without giving any commissions to any big private player. The logistics services have also improved. They have become digital in a much more impressive manner, meaning that it has become easier for the services to be mentioned and to come online and sell their services. In the end, it talks about what are the challenges and what can we do further. Like other chapters, this chapter also talks about global challenges, the global trade slowdown, which can threaten India as more and more countries go towards a protectionist path. Our export of the services can be impacted. There's also rise in AI, because of which the service export like IT etc. might come down. We need to reskill ourselves, and also there are offshore regulations, compliance issues. For example, let's say the US decides that we don't want to give H1B visas to the professionals anymore, or European countries make it difficult for the professionals of country like India to come and then trade. That becomes difficult. So our services sector, because it exports quite a lot, we are dependent on the regulation of other countries as well in the long run. These are certain challenges. This was chapter number 8 that focuses mainly on the services sector. Now, based on that, let's test yourself with a couple of questions. First, which of the following sectors contributes the highest to India's services export? Transport services, business and professional services, financial services, and travel and tourism. The answer is business and professional services. IT sector is a subpart, or IT services, a subpart of business and professional services only. We did discuss this. One more question. Which initiative focuses on digitizing India's e-commerce and services sector? Digital India Mission, Startup India, ONDC, Smart Cities Mission. We discussed this. This is the government's ONDC, Open Network for Digital Commerce initiative, that is aimed at democratizing e-commerce space. This was chapter number 8. I hope all of you have been following this series. If you want the PDF of this, do join my Telegram channel. I'll see you tomorrow with the next chapter. Thank you so much. Bye bye. Jai Hind.